Oh, hello there. I see you. Welcome, my fellow bookworms and book lovers, and welcome to a new video with me, Queen Ophelia the Third. Today we're going to do a book analyzing video, and I'm going to talk about a book I recently read called Heart of a Dog. I truly loved it, and I really want to share it with you guys. So let's get into it, shall we? I have divided this little analyzing into different parts. I'm going to do the summary of the book, and then we're going to talk a little bit on different kind of themes you can see in the book itself. And then in the end, I will talk about my own thought process on the book and what I myself really loved about the book. So, yeah. I will put timestamps below if there's something you specifically want to actually see. So you can jump right to that if you want to. So let's get into the video, shall we? The author's name of this book is Mikhail Bulgakov. I hope I'm not butchering that name too much, but something like that. He was born 1989 in Kiev, Ukraine, but it was the former Russian Empire. And he died, I think, 10 of March 1940s. He was originally actually a doctor, but he stopped doing and practicing medicine when he got into his writing more. He was very well known for being very humorous, but also very realistic in his way of writing. So together with the realism and with his humor, but also satire, people started reading his books more, and he gained a popularity from that. But I think it was around 1930s that his books was not published anymore, and he was kind of like blacklisted from doing any more publications, probably because he did satire on the Russian Empire and Soviet Union and everything, and they did not really like that. He did apply for being emigrated, but he never actually got that or that will for himself, because it was always denied by Stalin, and he would not let him emigrate or publish his work. But I don't think it was until 1930s that he was not allowed to publish anymore. So he did publish before that, and some books were also published long after his death as well. But it was still very, very popular, and people really liked his work a lot. The book we're going to talk about today, Heart of a Dog, was actually published 1925, so it was a few years before his blacklistment, in a sort. Some people have speculated it was because of this book that he got blacklisted and was not able to publish more, because it is a book that is a bit of satire on the country itself, but it could also have been verge of many things, because this was not the only book that he wrote that had satire in it. It wouldn't surprise me if it was like a lot of different reasons. But yeah, you can definitely read it and get a lot of analyzing into it if you know the history around that time. So that is very interesting in itself, even if the plot stands for itself and is really good on its own. But knowing that background story, I find it to be even more interesting to it. So to the summary. In this book, we're following a mad scientist of a sort, something like it. He does a lot of experiments, so to speak, on humans. They come to him because they want to live longer. They come to him because they want to have a better sex life, or they want to have their sex drive back or something. And he experiments with a different kind of animal things and putting them into humans, as well as, oh, I can't have children anymore, I'm too old, what do I do? And he's like, oh, maybe we can take this from this animal and put it into you. And he does different kind of experiments that way. One of the experiments that he does that we have to follow in The Heart of a Dog is that he takes the pituitary gland from a human and insert it in a dog. This is the first experiment that he does like the other way, so to speak, because normally when he does an experiment, is usually to enhance the human. But this time he's trying to, what happens if I do it the other way and try to enhance a dog, so to speak. His experiment does turn into a success in a way, because slowly the dog turns into a human. We get to see him from like the stage of being kind of like a dog, but more understanding than a normal dog, and then he turns a little bit more werewolfy, and then he turns into a human. Which, because the pituitary gland that the scientists take is from a very violent alcoholic man, which turns the dog into having the same kind of personality traits. He becomes very violent. He become a gambler. He become a drug addict. He become an alcoholic. He is attacking women, and he's doing like all these bad things, which turns the professor or the scientist to feel like maybe his experiments aren't the best. They are successful in a way, like, he can't say they're not successful because they are. But it starts making him realize that maybe it's not the best. Like, his experience, maybe it's not actually helping the human race or the humankind. But in a sense, this entire book is a sci-fi satire on pseudoscience, basically. And you can see that the author uses his fictional metaphor of these experiments for what he think is the failure of the Russian Revolution and the Bulgakov government. I'm sorry for butchering all these Russian names. I'm sorry. But he means that as the professor's unruly experiment, he also feel like it was a social experiment for the social equality in the Russian Revolution, which is an interesting fact to see. Just as the author feel like the professor's experiments or the unruly experiment upends his life, he feels like the social experiment that the communist government was trying to do was also a failure from the Russian Revolution in the social equality of life that kinda was a failure for the Russian society or culture in a way. One of the themes that we can see in the book is a revolution and regression, which feels like a very clear theme to be seen. You can see that in this book, the mad scientist, as I will call him, not to butcher any more names, he usually try to make humans better, and he's trying to evolve humans in a better way, like he's trying to put ovaries or stuff into humans that's from animals just to like prolong their lives or make them have babies even though they can't have babies. But normally people don't come back to him because after the procedure they go away and they don't come back, so he doesn't really know that much how his experiments go, so he's just hoping that all his work is of good use to people, which isn't always is. And he doesn't really realize this himself until he does his own experiment on the dog, and he's keeping the dog with him. And that's when he realizes that he's not prolonging in the life, really. He's not really giving them a better life or making them a better human or a better dog per se. He's just giving them more power to actually pursue the bad instincts that they do have. Like for the dog, when he turns into a human, he gets more stronger and faster in a way, and smarter. So when he goes to chase after cats, for example, it is easier for him to do that. He also have the bad instincts of drugs and gambling and everything, and as he becomes more human, that's something he can also actually do, which he couldn't do as a dog, which makes the professor or the mad scientist wonder what happened to the humans. Did he actually help them at all with anything of the things that he have done for them, all the procedures? Or did he just help them become stronger to do something bad with their lives? Which is something you don't really know. But this is also when the author himself implies that when it comes to the Russian government and the Russian Revolution, that all these experiments that they were talking about, the communism and everything, it wasn't for the better. And this is how the author kind of feels about the revolution in Russia as well. He felt like it didn't actually help with anything, it didn't do anything for the people, but instead it helped with the corruption and the immobility of everything. So it's very interesting because the book is not that very long, it's not very thick, but I feel like it has such a deep meaning with the satire of like the revolution, with the communist party, and you can read so much into it if you know about the history behind it. Otherwise, I feel like the book is also very, you can read it as a mad scientist doing really mad things with people and animals, which, is it morally right or morally wrong? Is this really what you should do? And again, science, does it actually improve the human race? Or is it just something that we think will help us, but in actuality, it's just making everything worse? Um, it's very interesting discussion to have, really, on that subject alone, and it makes me kind of feel like, if you want to take like books that I feel are kind of similar to the theme, I would recommend, like, if you do like Frankenstein and that talk about like, is it right? Can we as human bring life back? But is it right also to bring back life? Science, is it always good? Is science always good? Is science always actually helping the human race, or will it just make everything worse for us? Um, Another book that I really feel is a Swedish book, a Swedish classic that I do want to make a longer video on, but I haven't really done it yet, but it's coming. It's called Kallocaine. It's a Swedish classic about this scientist as well who makes a truth serum that he presents to the government. And in the beginning, he feels like this is the best serum of all times because this is a serum that will get out all the bad people in society because they can't lie when we use this serum on them. But soon the scientist also realizes that maybe sometimes we do have to lie. Maybe sometimes it is good to have all these secrets. Maybe sometimes, the science that he did with this experiment and with this serum, it wasn't the best of all. So if you are into these kind of books that do have the kind of like morally sciencey feeling to them, I do feel like this book, Heart of a Dog, is very good, and you should really read it. Also, if you're really into Russian history, I do really recommend you read this because you can find a lot of satire in this one, which is fun. It's a fun book. It's very fun and very witty written. Another way we have I do recommend if you haven't read Frankenstein or Calocaine, and this is something that truly you feel are interesting and you really like these kind of themes in books, pick them up. All these three books are very short books. I don't think any of them are actually longer than 250 pages. So they are not the worst of the worst, super thick books, because I know how it can be, I don't know if I will like this, and then you don't pick it up because it's 600 pages or something, and it truly scares you. But I kind of feel like these books are easier to pick up due to this reason, because they are on the shorter side of books, so to speak. Another theme we have to this book is social class, which I feel was very, very interesting when I read this book. I feel like the author, he definitely kind of made it worse than it is, just to make it not so much gray area, but he wanted it to be very, very clear. And I think it was because the book was so short, he just was like, I will make it as out there as possible. So the rich people are extremely rich, and then the poor are poor. And he obviously talked about of course this is satire and blah blah blah, but it still have some truth in it, because even after the Russian Revolution, it was it's not going, the gap between the rich and the poor was going to be me, but even after the Russian Revolution, you still had this huge gap in between the rich people and the poor people, which was another way of the author's way of saying that it was a failure to the revolution in a way. But you can see during the book, it's very interesting, it's very extreme, you see the poor people, for example, they eat rotten food on the streets. So they don't have clothes to wear when it's snowing outside. They don't have all these things. And then you have the mad scientist himself. He talks about his biggest issue is that he has an apartment with 7 rooms, all to himself, by the way, all to himself, because he's a rich man, a rich dude. And his issue is some people want him to have a smaller apartment, and he's like, why would I want that? I don't want to be like those people who have maybe no dining room. That would be the end of the world for this man. In one chapter, he just discussed the fact that what do I do? What do I legitimately do if I don't have a dining room? Do I have to eat my dinner on my bed? Like a poor person? Or do I have to eat in the kitchen? That's sacrilegious, And I felt like that was a very interesting take on it. You have these extremely rich people, or you have the extremely poor people. And I think it was the author's way of showing that even after the revolution, when we talked about the social equality was going to be dusted off, and the rich was not going to be that rich, and all that, it didn't really help. We were still in the issue of it, because there were still people who were rich compared to other people. Obviously it's a satire, and it's over the top with everything, but it is definitely something worth noting in the book for sure, with the social classes and everything. The last theme I want to talk about is science, nature, and all that. I feel like we kind of touched on it when I talked about the other science books, science fiction books that talked about like the Caine and Frankenstein, because it kind of have the same kind of feeling to it when it comes to morality. One thing that I thought was really, really interesting is though that in this book we do have some descriptions during the experiments and the procedures itself, where the author is using language and he's making it kind of vulgar during the experiments. For example, he's very like brutal in his word use of words when he's doing the surgeries, which I feel like it gives you a very fine line between, is this actually a medical procedure that is helping us, or is this dismembering a human being or a dog for that matter? Like, there's a very fine line where we draw like, is this for the better good, or is this just madness? Are we doing this because we're mad people, or are we doing this because we actually want to help people? And I remember like one of the sentences was like he was going to like take a scalpel and open up, and instead of just saying that he used the scalpel to open the skin, he was like he slashed open it. And I know that I was like, what do you mean slash it? It sounds like he's not doing like a medical or medicine procedure at all. It kind of more felt like he was into the mood and he was just like slashing open or killing something. And I feel like it was probably something that the author was thinking, like, you know, when he chose these words, he was like, these words kind of make it more unsettling in a way, which makes you like, you know, not trust the instinct of the science, but also not trust the instinct of the experiment. Because in the end of the book, we do finalize the thought that maybe these experiments was not the best. Maybe we did not actually help humans. Maybe we didn't help the dog. Maybe we didn't actually help anyone. Maybe these experiments were just like failures, and just, you know, what is right and what is wrong when it comes to science. Because when it comes to science, like, sure, science can help us with a lot of things, but science is also like, it stops where human knowledge stops. Humans doesn't know everything. We like to believe we know everything, but there are still some mysteries we don't know about, and our knowledge stops where our knowledge stops. So what is right and what is wrong? Is it good to go above and beyond with all these sciencey things that we're doing? Are they helping us? Are they not? There's a lot of like experiments that were done during the wars and everything, just to like, you know, they've helped society today because like we know things today and it increased the human knowledge on things. But were they actually right to do those experiments? Was it actually like morally right to do those? And I feel like this book kind of takes up that theme a lot, just like it did in Frankenstein and it did in the Caine book. And I do really recommend these books. These kind of themes to books are things that I really, really enjoy, which is very interesting because me myself, I'm not really a science person. I'm not really into math and all of that kind of things. But when it comes to more philosophical issues together with science, like morally wrong, is it like, is it meant to be or not meant to be? Is it like human nature to do this? I find it very fascinating. I really do. And lastly, we got my thoughts on this book. I think I've been very transparent maybe on what I think about it because I really, really liked it. I gave it a 5 stars. It's one of my favorite reads of this year. I can't recommend it enough. I feel like it's a wonderful book. I feel like it has everything. I also do recommend to reading it now during December or maybe January when you have like these colder weather or snow, because the book do take part during the wintry and coldness of Russia. So if you want to read something cold-ish during December, but you don't want it to be like Christmassy or anything like that, this is a good book for that. It does have the snow, it does have the cold, it also have like all these not Christmassy feelings, of course, but it does have a wintry coldness on it, which I find very interesting. Especially when you go to like the theme that I talked about, rich and poor and social classes, you definitely see like a lot of poor people laying out in the snow and the cold, and they don't really have clothes for the day or food for the day, and they basically eat anything that people throw at them. Um, During those passages, you definitely are described the wintry feeling of Russia, just to know like how some of the people were living during those times. So you do get a little bit of the winter feelings to it. But it is a really good book. I have not actually read the author's others books before. Uh, After I read this book, I went out and I got maybe two of his other books, and they are on my to be read list. I will most likely read one of them in January. But I've been waiting a little bit for reading it because I've had so many other books on my TBR right now, and I can't really get to them all at once, but he is one of my newly discovered cool authors that I'm like, I hope I like more of his books because they intrigue me. They really do. I really enjoy his way of writing. I enjoy the satire. I enjoy how humorous it is, but I also enjoy his way of, because he himself was a doctor and practiced medicine, his way of describing medicine and how science work in like the human body and what how the human body works, especially in this book, it was just fascinating to me. It was amazing to see that realism together with the morally questions that you get together with satire. It was a very special book, that is. I know that the other books that I bought myself are not about medicine in the same way, but it do still have satire, humor, and a little bit of morally questions. I think one of the books, I think it was called Margarita and something. I think it had something to do with the devil, someone selling their soul to the devil, or the devil doing something. It also had something to do with a black cat. I can't say I know that much about the book, so don't take my word for it. Don't listen to me on that one. Um, but that is one of the books that I really want to pick up next, and it is on my bookshelf. I did buy it, and it's just waiting for me to pick it up, basically. But yeah, for me, this book was a 5 out of 5 star, and I do recommend it if you really, really want to have a sci-fi experimental satire book, you know. If and like I said, if you liked Frankenstein and you liked that kind of feeling to books, this is basically up your alley, and you should pick it up. mm. Anyway, that is everything for my thoughts on this book, and this is everything I have for you today. Woo! Uh, have a lovely evening and a lovely second advent, and much love to you guys. Heart. Bye bye.